Let's get right to it. The first question is fairly common, but the answers are always interesting.
Question 1. What kind of evidence would it take for you to believe in God?
Not what would be a good start, but what evidence would actually convince you. And when we say God, we're talking about a mind which is all loving, all powerful, meaning he can do everything but the logically contradictory, all knowing, and eternal.
Question.
The evidence that I would find that I would have to see in order to believe in God would be any evidence where God is a more complete or full answer than any other option that's available. It's really kind of hard to give an example of that because it hasn't yet happened in human history, at least to my knowledge. Since God, while albeit simple and beautiful as an answer to a question, is never really sound or complete in a way that science can explain. One example that I maybe can think of off the top of my head would be spontaneous amputation regrowth. A person or a soldier who had lost a limb who had it grow back without the aid of science, and they could prove that it wasn't done by science or some undocumented sort of procedure in stem cells, that it had happened on its own and that it was documented. We could see before and after photos or a video of regrowth mid growth. That would be the kind of thing that would prove to me that God existed, because that can't really happen in the natural world. But even then, that doesn't make me believe in God. It's evidence to make me think that God is real, and that's a key difference. I wouldn't believe in God. When evidence is shown that proves God is there, then it's no longer belief, it's fact. And that's really the primary difference. And even in that situation, it doesn't prove that the God is all-knowing or all-loving. It just proves that he has the ability to regrow arms.
Question 2. Is there anything that I can do that could possibly convince you that God exists?
Like, would any argument we could make have the potential to persuade you?
Question.
No. I know I know a couple people that are philosophy majors, and they really like the idea of the a priori arguments, which, for those of you who aren't aware, is the concept of proving a statement using logic and interior motive without any evidence from the outside world. But the concept or thought of proving that God is real through thought and words alone is kind of insulting. Really, I mean, it's insulting to me as a rational person. It's insulting to you as somebody who has faith in your God. And if God is real, it's insulting to God, I would think, to assume that it's so simple of a question and so simple of a being that you could just solve it with words. So no, I don't think that words alone could ever be enough to prove. And just like words from a mouth or words from a book wouldn't be enough. If it was, then the Bible's already there, and I would already believe. So that isn't enough for me, and it shouldn't be enough for any rational person who bases their life on evidence and fact.
And 3. If you realized that an all-loving God existed, would you desire to have a relationship with him?
If you said yes to that question, would you want to have a relationship with him just to get into heaven, or for some other reason?
Question.
Pardon the snuggie, by the way. It's freaking cold where I'm from. If there was some sort of proof that God was real, like if he were to regrow the arm, like was shown, or in an even more obvious option, let's just say he spoke to the world in a way that he did in the Bible, that it came back and he decided he was just on vacation, comes back and says into the minds of every single human being on the planet Earth, hey, I'm here, sorry I was busy, I was making a hot pocket. Then yes, I would want to get to know him, but only if he was moral. Just because he said all loving, but just because he loves me doesn't mean that he's a good person or a good God. If, for example, the God that you're speaking of was the true Christian God in the way that the Bible describes him, then no, I would have no interest in getting to know him, because that God disowns homosexuals for an act that is none of his or anybody else's business. He tells slaves in multiple portions of the book that they should support their masters and obey them with honor and dignity, which is a thing that I find I'm disgusting. I have a hard time finding words to describe that. He also, in multiple occasions, tells men to stone their wives on their wedding night if they suspect that they're not a virgin. Now, the interesting thing about that is it's a command from God. It's not just you can, it's you must. And if you don't, then you're going to hell along with her for not obeying God when he told you to stone her. These things I don't find moral or just or good in any sense, and I wouldn't want to get to know that God. And even if hell was real and heaven was real, and I knew that I'd be going to hell for not going along with that God, no, I wouldn't anyways. I wouldn't pretend to respect a God that unworthy of respect any more than I would marry a woman I hated just because she had a rich family. I have principles, and I'm not going to debase them just because it benefits me.
4. Have you ever met a Christian who lives their life in such a way that it is clear that they really believe in an all-loving God?
Meaning they live a life which is impressively kind, loving, and selfless.
And question 5.
All right, question 4. I have met a lot of people, Christians, Muslims, when I was in Iraq, who truly believe in their God, and they're not idiots. They truly believe in it. They're not just not thinking about it. They've thought about it and they've made that conscious decision. But that doesn't magically make them kind or loving or charitable or anything. I like this little caveat that you added that I'm not insinuating that only Christians can be moral. I like that you say that. But one thing that I would add is that you also aren't saying that being Christian makes you moral, because other people other than Christians can be moral, and just because you're Christian doesn't mean that you're a moral person. Paul J. Hill was a very upstanding Christian. He donated massive amounts of his money to charity. He worked in soup kitchens. He taught Sunday school at his church. He was a kind, upstanding, honorable citizen, right up until the point when he took a shotgun and pointed it into an abortion doctor's face and pulled the trigger and went to jail for murder. So maybe that question really isn't as simple as you or I would like it to be. If it was that simple, then different people like us wouldn't have problems with each other. There wouldn't be a need to have these kinds of conversations. But yes, I have met quite a few good Christians. I don't think that anybody's religion is a say-all, end-all of who they are as a person. It's how they process it and how they act in their life. It seems to be this really isn't an answer to the question or anything, kind of a send-off from the question, a little bit of a rant. But it seems to me that it's usually the religious people who tend to consider the fact that you're religious to be more important than how you act, what you believe to be more important than how you act. It's the Christian who thinks that being a Christian makes, like, that you assume that if they are, then you know that they're good, or if an atheist, you know they're bad. Atheists don't have beliefs. So to assume that an atheist would assume you're immoral just because of what you believe, wouldn't do that, because atheists don't hold any stock in belief. I can say that knowing somebody who's a Christian, it sort of, I'm hesitant to say it lessens my respect for them, but it doesn't increase it in any way, to think that they would hold beliefs that are so illogical, in my opinion. But if a Christian, I have plenty of Christian friends, and if they're Christian and they're good people, then they're good people, and whether they're Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, I honestly, I wouldn't care if they worship the devil. I don't believe in him, so it doesn't bother me. But it doesn't make a difference when you compare that fact to who they are and how they act. Who you happen to pray to is irrelevant.
And question 5. Has the presence or lack of that type of Christian had any impact on your atheism?
Feel free to make a video.
Yes. The good Christians have done a lot to give me hope for the people, but also the bad ones have done a lot to make me defensive. And that's a big thing. You see atheists a lot of times, and you see that they're very defensive people. They tend to jump down throats. They research and they quote the Bible, and they do it in very demeaning ways. They seem to be elitist and intellectualists, and it's very off-putting. But you have to understand where that comes from. You're saying, I'm an atheist and you're a Christian, so you say you believe in God and I say I don't, and we can disagree on that. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have to believe what you believe. You don't have to believe what I believe. The problem comes from many Christians, and this is a majority of them, who, when are confronted with an atheist, literally say things like, if you get sick or you get ill or your life is in danger, you'll pray to God. Or when you grow up and you snap out of this, you'll come to God. And so it's not just I don't believe in what you believe. It's you're lying. You don't believe what you believe. You believe what I believe. You're just too stupid to realize it. And it's a dismissal of who I am as a person. Like, to completely dismiss the core of what I am and what I believe is so insulting on a level that the English language doesn't have words. Honestly, murder is better. At least if a Christian were to kill me for being an atheist, they would be recognizing that my belief is real. At least they're recognizing that I exist, as opposed to complete dismissal of what I am and who I am. And And honestly, as a Christian in America, it's really hard to even understand the kind of things that we have to go through and the things that would make us so defensive and so off-putting to someone of the majority religion, because you don't have that situation. Your beliefs are immediately respected. You don't have to defend yourself on a daily basis, minute to minute, from everyone, including your own families. And those people have done a lot to harm my belief, my faith, if you want to call it faith, my faith in the Christian people. And it does a lot for others as well, other people that aren't Christian who happen to be atheists or even any other religion. Anyway, this is PFC Metzger, U.S. Army medic, and these are my answers to your questions from atheists, from the point of view of an American atheist. Thank you for actually caring enough to listen, which is a refreshing difference, a refreshing change, and I hope it's one that continues in the future.